you are gonna see some cool ass shit.
Yeah, you don't want two Flavor Flays.
Heart transplants, brain surgeries. I've seen it all.
Dude, that's fucking dope.
Walk up and just get it, whatever it is.
Yeah, brother.
I'm trying not to laugh, bro, but Josh is fucking killing me.
Guess what Navy SEALs do, motherfucker? They communicate and they're on the same fucking page.
Whoa.
We're rolling.
Welcome, everybody, to the Happy Hoodlums podcast. It's your host, Kemper Woodruff, the Happy Hoodlum himself. And we got the very powerful, very strong Zachary Sampson in the house. Anyway, we're talking very briefly before the podcast, and Zach already had one in the chamber, so this is what we're rolling with for our first topic. Hit it, Zach.
So what I notice a lot of people do nowadays, especially with like how big social media has gotten with things, but also not just that, but also like the way it seems people value themselves based on the opinions of other people, or even not necessarily the opinions of other people, but like the evaluations of other people. And so where you see that a lot is in things like job promotions or getting picked by somebody that you're really into, like someone picking someone else over you rather than like picking you. And so a lot of people will look into that and they'll be like, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not this or I'm not that, and they'll start feeling really down on themselves. And I think that's not just a byproduct of social media, but it's also kind of an old thing. It's kind of this thing that came from the harder you work, the more you get, right? And so when you're in a job, especially like the older generation, I'm talking like 40 plus, right? They were always taught, you start at this stage, right? So let's say just minimum wage for an example, right? You have to work your ass off and then you'll get more. You'll get a promotion or you'll get a raise. Well, people tend to work their asses off. A lot of people, some people slack off a lot. But some people will work their asses off and they may get overlooked for that promotion or overlooked for that raise. And then that starts a downward spiral of like loathing and anger and sadness and the feeling of like you're not worth it even though you are performing. It's just for whatever reason people are overlooking you. And maybe it's just the fact that they're not overlooking you, it's that they're not seeing it, right? They're not paying attention to you. And I guess that is overlooking, but that's kind of where my head's been today. Is just like, I don't feel that way. I've just been helping somebody through that. And so it's like especially when you have someone who so much wants to be better and move forward and move up and evolve and grow, they put so much weight on themselves and so much weight on the opinions of other people, because sometimes especially in a job environment, you can't really grow without somebody liking you. You can't move up without somebody liking you, which is kind of a shitty thing.
That kind of plays into something that I've been like really picking up on this week, not only in my own life, but in just like listening to some of the podcasts I've been listening to. And so first I'm going to preface this by saying I heard a great quote, and it was, true power is always given. It's never taken. Okay?
Yeah.
And then piggyback off of that, humility. Humility in leadership is an incredible trait. And it's only cultivated through working hard, not necessarily failing, but learning along the way by being a dedicated student and gauging the quality of your work by its result very, very sternly. And um, as I've said it many times on the podcast, so a lot of people probably know, my dream was always to be like a special forces operator, you know? That was always my thing all growing up. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, and in particular, MacV SOG stuff. And for people that don't know about SOG in like Vietnam, it was a bunch of essentially like clandestine operations, complete covert shit where, and
What does SOG
it had the
stand for?
highest, I can't remember.
Okay.
It was basically under the guise of being a surveillance like
Okay.
system or like a recon thing, but they were basically conducting operations outside of Vietnam where they weren't supposed to be. And so SOG was used to cut off supply lines to the North Vietnamese through, Laos and Cambodia and shit like that, right? But essentially, they were these extremely small teams of people. There were 6 to 8 guys that every mission was up against 500 to
Yeah.
thousands of soldiers,
So
you
basically,
know?
like squad sizes going at battalions almost.
Yes, 100%.
What it
Um,
stands for, by the way, is studies and observations groups. Is what? Yeah, it's
yeah,
like personnel.
they because it's Mac v SOG, and it was something about reconnaissance is what they kind of tagged it under. But listening to the stories from these gentlemen are incredible,
Yeah.
um, in what they were doing and their tactics and their instincts and how they had to be so sharp in their after action reviews,
Hmm.
and really judge themselves super, super harshly, but have absolute humility to look at their fuck ups and go, all right, how can I make this better? And they just became so organized and structured, and nobody worked harder than them. Like undeniably, the shit that they were doing, like there were reasons why they had the highest turnover rate of any other area, um, of I guess employment in the military at that time, because they were just always up against the craziest odds, and they would,
So what do you mean by turnover rate?
people dying.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Like
In my head, when
they
you
had
were
the
saying that,
highest.
I was like, they had to have had the highest mortality rate.
Yep,
Yeah.
everyone was. If you, everyone was dying. Everyone was dying, and if you didn't, you were a fucking savage. And the shit that they would come up with was just crazy in their tactics. But really, what I was taking from that is like humility. And do you have anything to interject before I kind of take this a little bit farther?
Well, I was gonna ask what podcast you listened to this on because I wanted wanted to hear what the name was again, and then I was gonna
You
say
can just
humility is huge in
look up
terms
the
of just like
SOG cast.
the
SOG.
SOG cast. Okay,
Yeah.
on YouTube, I'm assuming.
And I think honestly, there's a very recent Jocko episode
Okay.
with Dick Thompson, and he was promoting his book called Codename Dynamite, which was what his like tag was, um, back in the day when he first joined. But essentially, in my life, I had to look at what it means to truly be a student, um, because I took the real estate exam and I
Hmm.
passed the national portion of it, which is actually the harder portion. It's like close to 100 questions. I
Yeah.
passed that off the rip, but I failed the state portion twice, and I
Oh
was so
fuck.
fucking mad. You know what I mean? Because I'm taking these like study um, quizzes and stuff, online, and I'm getting like in the 90%, you know, so I know the stuff, but it's just it's been a very humbling experience, especially coming from um like growing up, no matter what I was studying, even if I just listened to you talk about it, I could get like an A on the test. I'm just a fantastic test taker. And I always have been. And so to me, it was this like, it took me back to, I don't want to say like grit, because it's kind of like, dude, all you did was like fail a test. But I've invested, you know what I mean? Like, I've invested like so much of myself into this,
Yeah.
and getting to this point where it's like, I don't give a fuck how many times it needs to be taken until it gets done, you know? And truly looking at like how I'm studying and going, all right, is there a better way? Can I find a different test? Can I listen to videos that, you know, and I've just been kind of going back to the drawing board
Yeah.
and continuing um until I get it done. But it was something that really kind of was like, I had to have some humility within myself to show up again. And now I'm going to show up again. And I'm going to show up week after fucking week until it's done. You know what I mean?
Facts. And that's like I mean, failing at something is the ultimate form of, and this sounds like really counterintuitive, but failing at something is the ultimate form of delayed gratification. Especially if you can actually do like retain and maintain the mentality of being a student the way that you're talking about, and always going back to the drawing board and like, okay, well, what can I do to do this? And what's a new approach? What's something else that I can do to learn and like maintain this information? A side note, a lot of these fucking online courses, what they like to do is quiz you and practice test you on shit that's not even on the fucking exam. And so then they'll fucking hit you with shit that you never even fucking thought would be a question because they never asked it. And they fucking get you. So you can also not, well, you can take a little bit of blame off of yourself, which might be a little relieving in those regards, which might help with the moving forward process. Because I know some people need that. Some people aren't so self-driven by failure like you are, and so some people might need a little bit of a reprieve from that. Like, fuck, I'm the reason I failed type thing. And like, yes, at the end of the day, your mind is the reason that you failed the test because you didn't, whatever it was, whatever things lined up to the fact that you didn't answer these questions right. That's you. But also, are they really preparing you for what's on the exam? Are they giving you bullshit information and then asking you about something they didn't teach you about? Um, and so like there's a whole like line of shit, especially with these online courses. But essentially what I'm trying to say is you're always responsible. But you
Yeah.
don't always have to be the hardest on yourself at all times. Be hard on
I,
yourself. Don't fucking destroy your ability to move forward. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm talking you as in a broad term. Um,
yeah.
but that's
I,
kind of like my thought process.
I just think, um, in terms of just how I handle things, um, I recognize that how I feel about something doesn't determine what something actually is. Like,
Facts.
things exist outside of your definition. If you look at that cool thing right there, um, whether you call it beautiful or ugly, it isn't either of those things. It exists outside of it. And I look at results kind of in that same way,
Hmm.
with a certain level of like, I might be passionate about this, but I'm indifferent um, to the results. And I look at it as like data,
Yeah.
right? Like, because if I can just remove it and go, like, yes, I want this really fucking bad. Like, when I came out, dude, I was so mad. definitely I punched my steering wheel like once. I hit it twice, and I was like, if I hit this thing a third time, I don't know if I'm gonna have like a steering wheel.
Beep
I'm
beep.
like, all right.
Fuck.
So I took my calculator. And was like, "Bow!" It just straight up, it just exploded in my hand. I was like, I need to go do something with myself,
Yeah.
So I'm fucking screaming, and I'm like, dude, I went to the gym, and I was like, all right, I just I put maybe only like 115 on the bench and just fucking repped it probably 50 to 70 times.
Yeah.
Like
You
just
you walk
ridiculous.
into the gym and like you're done. Like
And
you're
then
saying that to the gym, like you're fucking finished. I'm here for your ass.
I got fucking Rage Against the Machine playing. I put on
Oh
25s and I
shit.
just kept going until literally I couldn't feel my arms.
Oh, there you
And
go,
it was
bro.
like all of a sudden,
You want to talk about
the,
humility real quick? That's 95 pounds.
I know
You
it's
said
it's
115, so I had to humble you a little bit.
no. I started with
Oh, you
115,
jumped up. Okay, okay, okay.
and then I dropped. Because
Oh,
I
gotcha.
still have
That's
you in my
clicked.
head going, you don't ever go on and just fucking cold throw on. Like, dude, I was like, I'm gonna put on
Yeah,
160.
you're. That's how you get a fucked up shoulder, dude. You got to warm
I was
up.
just like, all right, bro, fuck it. I'm warm enough, bro. So I went in there, just threw that on there, and I was just like, just throwing that motherfucker. But it took me to this point where I was like, I realized it's all just energy,
Yeah,
and
you got to put it somewhere.
yeah, I can do whatever with that energy. But I also realized like I'm a winner, and I'm a winner because I give a fuck less about comfort, you know? And it
Yeah,
was like I don't give a fuck about ever crossing a like proverbial finish line. I'm like, fuck that, bro. I don't need to escape the work. I don't ever want to stop working. Like I always want to be doing something that's crafting and building and making shit better, you know?
facts.
Um, and I think my mentality had kind of slipped a little bit. Um, because I just got into just straight study mode. And
Yeah,
the one thing that I had kind of eased up on was my like workout and like health stuff for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, because I was just so dedicated to that. And I was like, you know what, fuck that. I'm not ever gonna just like I'm not gonna let my life uh take such priority in this area that I allow another area of my life to completely fall off. I'm just
yeah.
gonna do both,
Well,
you know?
especially when like the part that you're letting fall off keeps you healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like there's that balance of like what do you allow to like take precedent or take priority in the moment, and then what do you allow to take the back seat? For me, I can't stand letting health and fitness take a back seat. That's a
Mm-hmm.
priority for me. Um, and I also wanted to go back and touch on the energy thing because I realized that some people might not understand what we were talking about because that was like a really brief thing that's also important to this conversation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you have feelings and emotions, when we talk about using or like that's just energy, it's you take that emotion, you take that energy, and you apply it, and you like laser focus it. So rather than it being a cone of just fucking expression of this anger, right? Maybe in the moment you punch your steering wheel, but eventually you narrow it in and you focus it on a task, an activity that is going to move you forward, right? And even though like you didn't go to the gym with a focused and a planned out workout, you did go in there and you did work out. That's focusing that energy and that rage into a healthy activity that thankfully is also a little bit cathartic. And so that's what we mean when we talk about focusing your energy, or that it is just energy, because you can take that anger or sadness or any other type of emotion and you can turn it into something that propels you forward, like a feeling of like desperation. Well, if you're desperate, let that shit push you in the direction that you want to go. Let it
Yeah.
fuel you and light the fire.
And I think something happens when you've just been broken so many times in your life, and you're so invested
Mm-hmm.
um, into something, you know, uh, and what kind of snapped in that in the and that I recognized in the aftermath was like, I'm no longer scared of failing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a fuck about failing. Like, I'm focused on my result and I don't give a shit about like how long it takes to get that fucking result. I don't care how many times I have to go back. And there's also lessons of like, I know what it's like to go in and just off the rip, there's an A, easy,
I do not
pass
know what that's
everything,
like.
and that's what I'm saying. There's a value in the experience of both sides, both
Yeah.
circumstances, and I guess I I had to take it far less personally, um, in a sense, while still holding myself accountable to the standard of excellence that I identify myself with,
Yeah.
But in doing that, when you attach yourself to that, the price that you pay for it is almost like you create a semi-fragile mind state. And I equate this to like when you hear people um who've been through extremely traumatic situations where you know that death was really just like right upon them,
Mm-hmm.
and they like come to terms with it. They're like, all right, this is what it is. And there's like a release. All that fear just like goes away. But it needed to come from this like crazy situation. And this situation for me is like there's a lot that hinges on me getting my real estate license,
Mm-hmm.
for my family, for my daughter, you know, for my ability to be a man of my word, to the people that are looking to hire me, and just like wanting to be of service, really wanting to help this world and to get more funds to help more. And I think it goes back to like that humility thing. Like, all right, well, how bad do you want it? How high you're willing to go or wanting to go is going to be determined by like how in the trenches and how low down you're willing to go and work at things that seem fucking menial in details, and do it over and over and over again just to get there. And I really look at it like if you just seek to be of service and the highest level of service that you can, like naturally you'll be elevated because people will be like, yeah, you do this really good, but like you're called to something, to this next level, and you elevate out of it. But you have to, no matter what, give yourself to it in that same level one dedication of being a student to the craft and adapting and just looking to be the best that you fucking can in anything that you do.
Fact. And that's like to go back to like the David Goggins book that I've been reading. I know we always reference, we seem to reference like the same five people all the time. But but anyways, that's essentially what his definition of being a savage is. And it's not necessarily like being exactly who he is, it's being the best at what you do. And that's what his like that's what I get out of his like his determination of what being a savage is. And it's like not being willing to not allowing yourself to be um just enough, but being more. And even if you fail, like you come short, there's still a way to fucking move forward. And an example of that is in this book I'm reading. He's writing I'm reading a portion about him running a 240-mile marathon, an ultra, like a super ultra marathon. You get 4 days to run it, and it goes through fucking mountains, high elevation, low elevation, the desert. You're freezing. Fucking, you gotta stop and sleep, and sometimes the way station, like the stations in between, are like sometimes they're 18 miles, sometimes they're 70. And so you have so much time in between, and there's so many different struggles that you're going through. And at one point in the race, him and his pacer. So you get a pacer that can run with you during a stretch in between stations, while your other teammates go from one station to another and meet you there. And his pacer was keeping track of navigations. They have an app that tracks your navigations, and when he put his own phone away, Goggins did, and he was like, you know what, my pacer's got it. And at one point they go off track, and they go off track for 15 miles. And so they're running for 15 miles more than they needed to. And at one point, his pacer looks at his phone because they finally got service again. And he just stops. And without any hesitation, Goggins turns around and starts running back. And essentially what this was in his mind was like, all right, this is a learning experience for me. This is something that I never had to encounter. And he could sit there and blame his pacer, who already felt like shit for doing that, right? But instead, he took the ability to learn, okay, from now on, I also need to keep tabs on navigations. Fast forward throughout the race, he gets altitude sickness and he has to drop out. So he gets DQ'd. He gets a did not finish. And so he gets back down to elevation, goes sees a doctor. He gets all this stuff. He gets right again. And he's laying in bed, and he wakes up his wife, and he says, how much more time until the finish line closes? And she says like 15 hours or some shit like that. He had, I want to say like 20, not 20, it's probably like 40 miles left, maybe more, something like that. Anyways, and they burst out of bed, knock on their last remaining teammate who stayed. The other two had already caught flights home, and he agreed. He changed his flight times, and they went back to where they drove him as far as they could, and then he got back to where he got picked up from the event staff. And he started running. But what he did was he didn't cross the finish line because he knew that he didn't really finish. So what he did is he ran the equivalent, but to a different spot. And so what this really long-winded explanation is that there are going to be points where you may give up. There are going to be points where you're going to fucking run 15 miles off course. You'll have to redirect. But as long as what you're saying, you remain a student, you continue to learn and you adapt to your situation. Even if you have to come off the trail, like he did, rest a little bit, and then go finish that race, he still finished 240 miles in 4 days in the time slot that they allow for the race. He still finished it. He just didn't get the accolades for it. And so even though there's failure in that, he made it a win. And so
Yeah.
that's essentially where I'm trying to go, is like,
Well,
you can continue to fucking make progress even when it seems like that's not a win at the end of the day.
and how I kind of describe like a savage in just the mentality is that I am enough because I have to be enough, but my result is never enough. No matter how good it is, it's never, ever, ever, ever good enough. But I am always good enough because I have to be. And understanding the difference between that. I am enough and I have to be enough because I have to get this done. And I have to take this as far as I can take it. And wherever I take it to, I know there's a farther than that. And that has to be okay. But I have to seek that, you
Yeah.
know?
You have to seek out being better. And
And
go ahead.
it's something that I discovered because, and I got so much relief. I was watching this interview of a Delta Force guy, Tom Satterley. He was one of the Black Hawk Down, um, like actual crew guys that was on the ground in Somalia during that fight. And on his Sean Ryan, was it Sean Ryan? No, it was the Better Broken podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he, oh damn it, sorry, I'm butchering this. It wasn't Tom Satterley. It was another gentleman that's a Delta guy, and I'm spacing his name. I want to say his name was Kevin. But anyways, the long short of it,
You fucked
I'm
it
gonna have
up.
to look that up.
You're not good
Is
enough.
is
Do
that
better.
he said in it,
Yeah.
when he was talking to this dude Buck, who's the host of the podcast, Buck was like, "I gotta know, um, what did you feel like when you went through the Delta selection? Did you finally feel like you were good enough? Because you went to literally the highest unit of operating, like in the military that there is."
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "I'm gonna tell you right now, it wasn't enough. You never feel fulfilling. It's just another thing that you get to and realize that it's still there's more. There's more." And you have to come to terms with that just the kind of people that we are, um you know, broken people, and everyone's that way for a different reason, but people that have really had hard fucking upbringings and shit, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and real struggles with like identity and their own personal value. That's what makes them on this next level of fucking excellence, because they just can't stop seeking it, because it's never enough. And that's where I really recognize, oh shit, like you really have made it when you can recognize yourself as enough, separate from the result that you get, and know that you're always going to want a better result. And if you can literally put that to rest, that aspect of fear will break off when you're okay with being humiliated by the process, when you're okay with failing absolutely fucking incredibly bad, you know, and going through that process and not letting the process ever fucking stop you, you know? And that's
Yeah.
really what it's all the fuck about. But I have to look this shit up now because it's gonna drive me crazy if I don't give that man his fucking props.
Yeah. Figure out his name. What I was gonna say, and you ended up explaining it, is that in the way that you had said it at the beginning was, nothing's ever enough, but I am enough. Some people could probably end up getting that confused as like, well, I'm not doing enough to make this enough. But then you ended up circling it around to you have to differentiate the two from something never being enough to you being enough. And I think those are two like really powerful things is not always being satisfied with what you have, but being satisfied with what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
Like as long as you're putting in your maximum, what you end up getting out is not necessarily always in your control. It's the way that you look at it, and it's the way that you redirect, and the way that you reapproach things, or the way that you move forward, um, that makes it worth it, and that makes you enough. It's not always about like that result.
Yeah, who you are is how you are,
Exactly. It's by your
and
actions.
um, the gentleman's name is Tyler Gray.
Tyler Gray. Well, you were
And
wrong on fucking. Holy
yeah, I
shit,
was
you were
way off.
off. Tony and Kevin. Those were your two that you
I
went
didn't
with.
say Tony. It was definitely a Kevin came out,
You,
but no,
the first name you said was Tony.
I was thinking about Tom Satterley because
Tom. Fuck.
he
I
had a
was thinking
really
about Tony Cowden or however you say his name.
oh yeah, Cowden hit me with some shit too, dude.
Yeah, that dude's
But
got some shit. He made me want to try whatever that shit he tried. I forgot.
Ibogaine,
Ibogaine. Yeah, exactly.
mhm.
That shit from the frog.
Well, no, the frog is actually different.
Is it different? I thought it was the same. Maybe
They
I
did
just like
they
I
did
spaced
they
it.
did Ibogaine as a warm up.
Oh,
And
okay.
for those that are listening, Ibogaine is essentially a drug that they can take, and he was taking it in like Tijuana in a facility down there.
Yeah.
Um, that a lot of people with like PTSD or addictions go down there just to really help with trauma, whether it's traumatic brain injury or psychological stuff. Um, and it actually has, I believe, something crazy like a 90, somewhere in the 90s, like a 90% fucking cure rate for opioid addiction. I think it's even
Yeah.
higher. I think it's like
Bro,
98%.
I've heard that same thing with like ayahuasca and alcoholism.
Mhm.
That just it's weird how hallucinogens seem to help a lot of shit. It's really cool, but it's weird too because you got to go to Tijuana to fucking do it. It's like why the fuck I got to go fly to Tijuana? It's like, but one of the cool things that like because when you hear Tijuana, a lot of people who especially haven't been there, I haven't been there, but when I watched Tony Cowden talk about it, he explained it was like, you think Tijuana is like it's Tijuana. You have a preconceived notion of what it looks like, but then you go there and you go to this gated community and you're doing hallucinogens and it's a completely different experience than what most people put in their head. It seems like you're going into like the backwoods of some shit that's sketchy and shady. And you're really not. You're going to like this really nice upscale place that's gonna take care of you on some real shit.
Mhm.
And
Well,
it's cool.
setting is like really, really important.
For real.
And having that's why if you look at like all ancient civilizations, they all had like shaman and like medicine people
Yeah.
because everything is conscious. Everything is made up of cells that are conscious. And so there truly is like a spirit to a medicine. And knowing how it's going to interact with different people um, is really important, and how to guide people through it. Like in Peru, um, they have these like medicine men that essentially will go on like fast of basically like everything, um, and only try like one herb at a time. So it might be like they're trying tobacco for like 2 or 3 months. And that's like the only other thing that they put in their system. And they
Yeah.
have this baseline of like really healthy, um, kind of diet and just kind of basic exercise and things like that. And the only variable that they're putting in is one substance at a time, so they can learn the nature of an herb and the thoughts that it provokes out of you.
Yeah, that's some like
And
primal experimentation. Like that's like legit experimentation,
hmm
and it's cool as fuck because you get like those people really figure it out. They build like a genuine relationship with the substance, and they understand it. They're like, hey, this might do this to you, and they're gonna be 100% right on whatever happens to you, like all the
hmm
different variables of it. It's like you might
yeah,
throw up, you might purge, or you might not, and this and that will happen, and then
hmm
this and that will happen to the T.
there's something really special about being there for someone when they fucking puke, like,
Yeah,
and like handling someone in a moment of vulnerability, and that's something that you can take out of that trip experience and into like daily life when you're able to identify on a human level what someone's going through. And I think I was talking about how I've been kind of joking with people more
yeah.
in just like my day-to-day life and really fucking with people kind of. And I don't think like fucking with people is the right term. It's more like fucking around.
Yeah,
Joking around and
you're
shit.
poking you're poking fun sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's just I recognizing and letting people know that it's okay. Seeing them as they are, but it's okay.
It's all
Uh,
in jest.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I think that's kind of just my way and one way of doing it. And it's not like they say, like if all the only tool you have is like a hammer, every problem's a nail. You have to have nuance, and you can kind of learn when it's appropriate to handle someone this way or that way, which just takes time and
Yeah.
failing and learning to like allow yourself to be mature in some situations and be a little more immature when the
Yeah.
situation calls for it as a remedy of like bomb defusal, because sometimes people are just like all fucking wound up and bound up in themselves, and you're just like, dude, I'm just gonna like allow you to alleviate all of that by me just kind of pulling the veil off of it, you know and
Sometimes it's
in
like
doing that,
go ahead.
it's like, oh shit, we're both naked. Like what? Like,
Fucking-
yeah, we are what we are,
yeah.
like it's okay.
Um yeah, sometimes it's all about just finding the right formation of words to hit somebody. It's like you can say one thing one week, but then you say the same thing just worded differently and it hits, right? And
Yeah,
so that's the same thing. It's just like it's the nuance in the way that it's worded or even the tone of it and everything
and
like that.
mastering energy. Like when you
Yeah.
become a master of your state of being and you recognize that all things are interconnected, right? So like um we're all from the same original source, that is God, the spirit. And that's like the root of the tree. And no
I thought we
matter
were gonna
how
go a whole episode without God, but we were so
far
close. We were so
however
close.
however far extended, in whether you're like down some branches or whatever, it all
Yeah.
comes back to that same root. But I'm saying this because truly when you're talking about like helping somebody, you have to recognize them as yourself. And so if I can control myself and manifest and really cultivate this state of calmness inside of me where I'm feeling that overwhelming sense of love and comfort, you then have that and you radiate it. And you can excite that energy in someone else without needing to say anything. It's just that person feels embraced in your presence, and you're recognizing that my capacity to have this is something that exists in you as well. And your power of influence is far more grounded and has more energetic momentum in terms of like the vibrational frequency of it than their state of kind of shakiness, right? And you can influence them up onto your level. And there's many different ways you can do it. But that's fundamentally what we're talking about. And when you recognize things from this ideology of true oneness and all things being intelligence and energy, you know, you just allow that and work with it and maneuver it. And that's a level of like self mastery that can be, um, I don't want to say imposed, but influential upon someone else and excited out of them. So they realize that this isn't truly fear. This is excitement that I'm stifling the expression of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is me really wanting to enjoy an experience that I'm not allowing myself to be fully present for. And it takes someone really handling you in that vulnerable state and recognizing it, not seeing it as a permanent thing or an unchangeable thing, but just a phase in your journey. And the humility comes back in to wrap this fully around, in that I don't need to judge myself harshly because you're farther along in a journey by having walked through that process before me.
Yeah.
It's okay if I'm just starting it and I'm down here and you're over there, because there's another area in life where I might be farther along and it's the same fucking thing. So fundamentally, we're learning the same lesson through different modalities all throughout the universe. And that's why we're not so different after all. And everyone comes back to realizing this. It just takes a little time, you know, and a little bit of experiences to kind of like knock the crust out of your eyes so you can actually see it.
For real. And I don't know if anything else is gonna beat that.
All right, so I guess that's us pulling the plug on this bitch.
Get
Mic
out
drop, man.
early. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
But
Well, another good episode. Everybody, we love you. Zach's out here flexing.
I can't. I
You got
feel so small. I haven't been able to really work out lately, so I feel my body dysmorphia is really kicking in. But anyways,
yeah. Well, right
till
on.
next week, guys.
Yeah. Peace.
Later.